one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it when you're in the fire. And so what I've developed is a way to reset my day by getting these little wins, and I don't care how small they are.
Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. All right, welcome to the Triple P Podcast. We're down here at ODC 2025, and we're sitting in one of the rooms, and we're able to get with Dr. Johnny. Is it Torgelson? I always struggle with that. Is it Torgelson? Is that?
No, I appreciate that you're butchering my name right now.
Yeah, like
I literally butcher everyone's name. It's Torgelson.
Torgelson, okay. Yeah. And I knew I probably was, and I'm really bad at it too. So, but anyways, we also have Chief David Bowen and Chief Jason Jewett, and I'll let you guys talk about give us a little talk about your department, where you're from, and then we'll kind of get into why we're talking with Dr. Johnny.
So my name is Jason Jewett. I'm fire chief in Hamilton Township, which is in southwest Ohio, Warren County. We're pretty close to Mason and Kings Island, to give you a little bit of perspective of where we're at. Hamilton Township is one of the fastest growing communities in southwest Ohio. 12 of the last 20 years, they rated number one in new homes built in our community. So we're a transitioning force. We just made the switch to an all-career force and increasing staff, and built a training tower in 23, and we haven't looked back.
Wow, that's awesome. I don't think I knew that you did a training tower.
Yeah, we built a 4-story training tower in one of our parks. We actually partnered with a neighboring department to get it done. Deerfield Township went in with us and built it, and our guys are down there every day when Deerfield's not there. So
yeah, but all right, Dave.
Dave Bowen, fire chief for the city of Napoleon. Been the fire chief for just over 2 years. July 1st would have been 22 years total with the department, so been there for a minute. Combination department, we have 40 people total on the roster, part-time, full-time, do just shy of 2,000 calls a year. So big industry starting to come to our area. So we're getting some more housing developments, apartment complexes, things like that. But we get quite a bit of industry where we're at. We're right along US 24 between Toledo and Fort Wayne, so it's a major hub, the port-to-port type thing. So we stay pretty active.
Well, I really appreciate you guys trying to help me interview Johnny. So,
absolutely.
All right. Well, now you tell us a little bit about yourself and in your department.
Yeah. Well, first, Chief, congratulations on the tower. A 4-story tower is huge. But also, I think the bigger win is you said they're there every day. I think many fire chiefs would die to be in that position. So congratulations on that. That's a culture.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a little about myself. Been married for 23 years, and I have three daughters. It's as terrible as it sounds. No, I'm just kidding. I always envisioned myself to be a boy dad. The concept of having girls never crossed my mind, actually. As strange as that sounds, I was just always picturing, taking my son to football and all that stuff. And lo and behold, God would have a different plan for me. And he said, you're going to have 3 girls. And so, but I am all in. I love every aspect of that, and total girl dad now. Let's see, I've been in the fire service since 2000, so the last 25 years. I work for MCLB Barstow Fire and Emergency Services, so that's Marine Corps Logistics Base. It's a federal installation that is in Southern California. It is the last stop before you head into Vegas, is the Barstow area. We cover about 200 miles of freeway, so our calls range from a couple minutes out to an hour out in all 4 directions. We also have the largest railhead on the West Coast in our district, as well as we run statewide mutual aid. Everyone is pretty familiar with California State's mutual aid system, so when you get the big fires, we go out as strike teams for either single resource, type 1 or type 6 strike teams. So, been there since 2000. Well, I went there in 2004, and I was recruited by a friend that was working for Kellogg Brown & Root. It's a subsidiary of Halliburton, and he's like, hey, come to Uzbekistan. So it's right above Afghanistan, and come make a lot of tax-free money. And so I got hired with Halliburton in the midst of starting where I currently work. And before I left, I asked the chief, I was like, hey, I love this department. I'm just going to go make some money real quick. Would you hire me back by any chance? And thankfully, he kept his word, and I came back, and I've been at the department ever since. So been there since 2005. And so I'm the assistant chief of operations there now.
Wow, that was how long of a stint was it when you went over there to?
Just short of a year. It was supposed to be over a year.
Yeah.
But this is going to sound terrible, but when I left, my wife had just had a newborn. And so that wasn't in the plan. And it was supposed to make some good money so I can come back, pay off debt, and start a business. So that way we can, not live paycheck to paycheck. And, I was young and I was 22 at the time, and had some grandiose visions, which I wound up doing, actually, starting a very successful business.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. That's quite the experience that would be over there, something way different than what we probably experience here.
For sure.
It's really interesting because Hamilton Township has had a mass influx of Uzbek people in the last few years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have a very big Uzbek community.
Yeah, and do they speak Russian?
They speak Uzbek. I'm not sure
Uzbek,
exactly
okay.
which dialect they speak, but it's a lot of language barriers we have with that contingency.
What's the draw?
Interesting.
What's the draw to your area?
I have no idea. It's been in the last 4 years. They've brought in numerous businesses, different types of businesses. One of them is a business called Truck Base. They bought an old chemical plant where all the buildings were tore down and the EPA cleaned out the area, and now they have a big, it's a truck-based plant. I mean, it's semi-trucks, but they're very big and affluent in the community. So
wow. So you wrote a book.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And forging your team. What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, so be covering some of this during the keynote tomorrow, but a little sneak peek is as a young fire officer, I was also going through a master's degree program in leadership, and unbeknownst to my crew at the time, they were guinea pigs. I wanted to be a very good officer, right? Like I wanted to take care of my people and had the reputation of being a good officer. And so as I'm going through these leadership classes and stuff, it's like, okay, well, see if this stuff works, and you start applying all these different principles. And long story short, 90% of it didn't work. It's like, oh my gosh, this is not working out at all. You try, you fail, and you're like, man, they're teaching this to people all around the nation, and then what you see is it's a lot of the same stuff that's been copied in our fire officer books, because really it's just a silo. We're just regurgitating stuff that is found in academia, and it gets transplanted into our fire officer books. And the concept is leadership is universal. So what works in corporations and works in factories must work in the fire service. I just found that not to be true. And I'm sure there's people that have, their own experiences with that. So this is just my experience. Mm-hmm. And so as I'm applying different principles, I actually start seeing what works. And I think what helped me was having a place to start from and truly being intentional about every action, all of my communication, everything was planned, 90% of it. I mean, obviously, there's extemporaneous stuff, just spur of the moment. But for the most part, stayed intentional with that. And so when you're intentional about these processes, you truly get to see what works and doesn't work. And what I wound up doing was innovating some different methodologies and practices that worked with my crew. And I didn't mean to do that on purpose. It just happened. And every time I would get a new crew, a new team, I would implement the same ones, refine some of the stuff that I was practicing and improve on those things. And all of a sudden, it was like working with the next group of individuals that I was able to build a team and lead a team with. And it was just like rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And so basically, I had a lot of information to share and that I wanted to, give to the fire service because, man, how much easier would it have been for me to not have to reinvent the wheel of learning a bunch of stuff in school that didn't translate well to the fire service. So that's where that's the cliff notes of where the book came from.
What size team are you talking about? How many people?
Yeah, so small unit teams is where I started as an engine company captain. So in our department, we get assigned 6 people. Obviously, because of RDOs and Kelly days, stuff like that, they're not all on shift at the same time. And so, I'd have 4 at a time out of the 6 that was assigned to me. Much like the military, you get a squad, they're usually 5 to 6 people.
What were some of the major roadblocks you were hitting when you were trying to implement these things you were learning?
Yeah.
Was it just the change coming in, or did you learn it was maybe delivery? I mean, what did you learn from, or what were your takeaways from having things not work? Like you had a plan in your mind.
Yeah.
You wanted to implement that plan. Of course, we all have, our plans are the greatest. So you were going to bring this latest and greatest. How did that affect wanting to continue? Because it's going to take some perseverance if you keep meeting those roadblocks to continue to want to strive to be better.
Yeah. No, that's Chief, that's an excellent question. And I'll even double down on it for you. I got to backtrack a little bit to answer that fully, so please be patient with me. When I was talking about starting a business, let me go back even a little further. Being a brand new firefighter, I was all in, like most of us are, right? The first 4 to 5 years, it was every cert that I could do. It was humble and hungry, showing up to work every single day. But that changed. It changed when I opened up a business. And at the same time of opening this business, just by happenstance, I got a poor leader at the same time. And it's not to blame this person because all my actions are my own. But the timing was not good for me in the sense of I started finding purpose and passion in running a team outside of the organization as opposed to being a backseater in the fire service. And so what I became, I progressively went down a slippery slope of becoming a paycheck firefighter. And today that's embarrassing to even, admit, but it's just the truth. I was the worst thing you could be in the fire service is a paycheck firefighter. And so the reason why that's important to answer your question is when I eventually got promoted and I had segued my passion back into the fire service, I was starting out with negative equity, meaning I was Mr. Irrelevant on the draft when it came to the promotion. Like no one pictured me as being the next captain. No one wanted me to be the next captain. Our department was going through a pretty rough time within itself. It was a very toxic environment, to say the least. And then all of a sudden, you got the last pick of the draft is now promoted. So that just sends everything spiraling. You guys can picture what that looks like. And then I'm going to make it even worse, okay? Even worse, I'm excited, because I'm naive. I'm the youngest captain the department's ever had or it had in decades upon decades. Very young captain. And so I'm walking into headquarters to thank the chief, and the deputy chief and top management team there for allowing me the opportunity because I was just super humbled by it. I wasn't expecting to get it, but I walked out of the last, part of the process interview very confident, Nonetheless, I was super humbled by it. And the deputy chief at the time well, let me back it up. I talked to the fire chief, and this is what he says to me. Well, you were number one on the list. Like, that's it. That was it. Like, all right, very cut and dry. You're making sure you're staying very political here. Like, number one, you got it. I didn't choose you because you were going to do anything for the organization. You were number one on the list through the process. Okay, great. But the deputy chief was much more frank. And I'm like, hey, thank you, chief. And he's like, hey, I'm going to be moving, I won't say a name, but this captain, and mind you, full circle, the captain that I wasn't a fan of, and he wasn't a fan of me when I was in the business, taking over his crew. And it was the problem child crew in the entire department. And I immediately responded with, I don't remember my exact words, but like, no, or I can't do that. Like, and I asked him, like, hey, can you give me another crew? Like, I can dip my toe in the water. And then I'm going to tell you, he says the most cliche thing. And whether he meant it or not, I mean, I'm sure he'll tell me today he meant it, but he says, if I didn't think you can handle it, I wouldn't put you there, right? I'm sure every single person, because you're all high achievers, have heard that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I immediately, because there's plausible deniability there, there's nothing to argue. So I just shut up, and I immediately went from excited to about being a captain and leading people and serving people to just this like, I didn't want to do it, honestly. It was just like, oh my gosh, what did I just do to myself? But I'll tell you this, it was the best, I know it's cliche to say, but it was the best thing to have ever happened to me.
Yeah, the most rewarding thing to ever happen after you got going. And so you take over this crew that is, the lowest performers, or the problem childs, or whatever that is. And so when you get to that crew and when you begin to start seeing a change in them because of your leadership, is that how then you begin, like, starting to Dave's point, like making these little adjustments and changes, and then this is how you form the book, right? Because of all the things that you learned from this specific crew, probably. Yeah,
that was, now mind you, this stuff is happening in the moment and organically. So none of these thoughts are going through my mind. I'm in, especially the first year, I'm in straight up survival mode. So much so, and I'll be very candid here. There was, especially like the first 6 months, there were many times where I would go on my bed in the bunk room, and we have individual bunk rooms because I wouldn't have did this in public, but got on my knees and just sobbed and cried to God and like I can't handle this. Why I'm in this situation, and just alligator tears of just like feeling sorry for myself. That happened on more than one occasion. So even though it's the best thing that happened to me, it's, there's a lot that goes into that you would never be like, oh, I want to go through that again. Hindsight, it's the best thing, that happened for me. But going through that process, to answer your question more specifically, is it was kind of like, like Legos, like with the first crew, I made crazy amount of mistakes, mind you, like crazy mistakes. That's where you learn from, is those mistakes. And in the midst of making those mistakes, you see that people react certain ways to certain situations, no matter who you are. It's human behavior. And that's what I started to pick up on of, hey, in this situation, if I use this tone of voice, if I'm in this environment, if I say these words, I get a certain reaction. And so you become a student. And, that stuff would just analog in my brain, and so when I'm back at that situation again, if there was something I wanted to, change a little bit about hey, I was 85% there, but I need to do this, right? And so you just start experimenting more. And then I would find what worked well for me, and I think that's important to say too, is no matter what, there's a certain way of throwing ladders, right? There's a standard practice that we can all agree on throwing ladders, but even within that standard practice, Chief, is, you go up and throw that ladder, there's going to be a little bit of a twist, to make it easier for you.
Right.
And so I recognize that too. And so some of this stuff, it just works well for me. But there is a standardized operation that I do believe we should be following when it comes to team development and how that actually works. And realizing also, and I'll end with this, but realizing of the major misconceptions of even having teams in the fire service. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of assumptions that we work on teams just because we're on the same engine company, we're on the same truck company or rescue company, we work for the same organization, or we have the same, team leader. But very, very few departments actually operate with teams, especially at every level of the organization.
When you went through this process your first year, when and how did you make that switch? I mean, at what point did you go, oh yeah, I can do this?
I never felt that I couldn't do it. I just felt that it was hard.
Okay.
Harder than I thought it was going to be. Now, mind you, my very first shift, you guys can all remember your first shift as a captain. So I had acted up prior to this, like a bunch. And it's like being the backup quarterback. I had no stress, like it was easy, like I wasn't worried about the human resource management of things. All I was worried about was tactics and strategies, taking care of my guys on the call. That was it. And then when I got to my first shift and I'm putting my bunker gear in the front right seat, I felt the weight of that responsibility. And boy, did that give me the onus, that gravity of what that felt like is really what set me on my path to, I got to do this right. So,
okay. I think you bring up a couple good points in there for those that are listening that are aspiring to be officers too, is you still have to be a student. You still have to learn your crew. And I think that was probably one of the big takeaways I took from your answer there was you stepped back and started to learn your crew. Right, you had to learn what was working for them because it was nothing like you've seen before or done before. Because in that acting role, you're just there filling a position. Now you're there filling a title, and you have to do it, and you're responsible for those guys, and you have to answer to not only to them but to your superiors and to their families if something goes wrong. But you have to learn them to learn how to make those changes, and that earns trust with your people too. So I think that's a huge takeaway from that is you never stop being a student. Right? We're always learning, and I think that would help a lot of people out there because there's a lot of people that are chasing a helmet. Mm-hmm. They're not, they want to be there because some places they feel like it's a title to do less. When honestly it's a title to do more. You have to continue to master the craft just from a different lens.
And one of the other things I had picked up that he had talked about, and I think that, I've been talking about it, and we just talked about it in this last podcast that we did before this one, was, that individuals that usually get promoted, they're promoted because they're really good at their job. Skill set wise, they can throw a ladder really good, and they can pull a hand line really good, and they can search a place, and they're really good on the EMS scenes. And then they act up and they have no stress and they do these things. But what they don't do, and what I think that we fail in the fire service a little bit, that I'm at least trying to focus on a little bit more, is teaching behaviors. Teaching how you can coach behaviors, because you can't, the skill set, we can teach you all how to be good skill set. We can't teach you how to break down your body language to ensure that I talk to you different than I talk to you. And then to not be so defensive all the time, and that you like, to Dave's point, you learn from each of your crew members that they're not asking you that question to make you defensive. They're asking that question because they don't know. and you need to be able to have that little bit of a, how the human behavior works and in the sociology of it all, of like how you can connect with them to then motivate and inspire them to be able to be. And it's so much different now because of the generations that we're in, or that are coming in.
Yeah, what I found in our promotional processes that we've done and stuff that I've seen over the years in the fire service is we are great at testing their ability to make decisions, or tactical decisions, and their knowledge base and everything. But I know in all the processes that I got promoted in growing up throughout the fire service, nobody ever taught me how to deal with people and how to forge a team and how to bring people together. And I learned it through trial and error. And this book of yours, and the teaching that, that we want to put our people through, that's something we've done in our department is, we started an officer academy that we do every year, and it takes them through all the stuff that they don't know, but I mean, it's also through, conflict resolution and how do you deal with people. Last year when we did ours, I had a bunch of brand new officers. We brought in a psychologist. How do you talk to your people? How do you read your people's behavior? What is body language, and how can you read body language? And we're not masters at it by any means, but I never had that, and I wanted to give that to our people. And so those are some of the things that we're doing, trying to get us to that level.
Wow, that's incredibly impressive. You guys have all said a lot, so there's a lot to unpack there. Just some really key points, starting with you, Chief. You mentioned like being a student, and there's also a maturation process that occurred to me, and that is, you start out, if you're doing it right, you start out trying to be a student of your people and of just human psychology. Some of the best leaders I know, they read a lot of psychology books, right? Because human behavior is human behavior. But learning specifically your people, as both of you guys had mentioned. But then there's this next part of the maturation process that I didn't realize I was going to go through. And you would think one would happen before the other. And for some, maybe it does happen opposite. But for me, it was, I became a student of people, student of my people. And then I became a student of myself with that self-awareness. And the reason why I think it happened that way is because we have a lot of blind spots. And boy, did I have a lot of blind spots. And that is, for many years, I was confused that self-awareness was just knowing who I was, like what my identity was. But self-awareness isn't just knowing who you are, which many people still struggle with that, of knowing who they are. But even with self-awareness, there's another level, and that is who you are and how that affects people in their world. That's the next level of self-awareness, is you in someone else's world, what does that look like? And that was the part that another maturation process I had to go through as a leader that I'm still going through, where, and I'll use one example for you real quick, and that is, as you guys, everyone here at this table are high achievers, right? And so when you're a high achiever, you're typically oil and water with toxic people in an organization. Like you're just diametrically opposed to each other. And it just happens, right? There's no common ground in that sense. And so I would write these people off because, like you're toxic and I'm trying to go in a different place and it's not worth my time, right? But what I realized is it wasn't just because they're toxic people that they weren't fans of me. They weren't fans of me because of my ego. And for me, because inherently I want to serve people, and I mean that in the most genuine way. I know it gets thrown around a lot, but I genuinely wanted to just give the shirt off my back, whatever I could do to make someone's life better that I worked with. Even though I was expressing that in a very real way, as well as I could on shift, there was a contingent of people in my department that saw me in a complete opposite light. And the reason why they saw me in a complete opposite light is because of my lack of ability to know how I was being perceived in their world. And that was egotistical because of being a high achiever. And so I still am working on that today, mind you. I'm not there by any stretch of the imagination. But it is part of that maturation that of being a student. You start being a student of people, but then they become that mirror, that reflection for the self-awareness piece. And that's that next level of, okay, I know them. How am I fitting into this? And what do I need to do to truly be a positive impact on these people's lives, no matter who it is?
And I think it's a big part because you in this world, in the fire service world, type A personality. And Dave, we've talked about this lots of times, right?
We've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point where we couldn't be in the same room together.
That's right.
And we had the same vision, just different lenses, and didn't know where each other was coming from, nor did we want to take the time to understand where each other was coming from.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
That's
that
amazing.
goes back to many years ago.
That was 15 years ago now, probably.
And when Dave got hired in Napoleon, because I mean we had the conversation. Said, hey, I wasn't, and honestly, it was a self-reflection when because Dave was on the part-time side and I got promoted to chief at the time. And we didn't get along when Dave was on the part-time side and I was a full-time firefighter at all. It was just, we just again, two different perspectives. I was a full-time guy. He was a part-time guy. Does that matter? No, it doesn't. But in our world at that time, it did. And so when it came down to being hired full-time, we had the list, and it was just shortly after I became chief.
Yeah.
And I did a heavy self-reflection on that. I didn't want a personality conflict, Dave and I's personality conflict, to come between somebody's fire service career starting and or not. And I was in this driver's seat of being able to make this decision on somebody's career. And so I asked Dave to come in, and we had a conversation, and we were very clear about it. We knew where we stood with each other, and he was very honest, and he would still tell me today, and I will still tell him today. That's what I love about the fire service too, is about how you can have this the relationship built on respect rather than built on because the glass relationships that happen sometimes. And so I just said, and I told Dave that, I said, I wasn't willing to have your fire service career be on a hold compared to, because it was a personality conflict. I said, if it's a personality conflict, we got to work it out. If it's a character flaw, then we'll figure that out in the probationary period, and then there will be no longer, right? Because the character flaw is a complete moral compass is different or whatever else. But if it's a personality because we communicate differently, then we just got to break that down. And I will tell you, Dave was my highest. Well, I got to hire him not only full time, but then got to promote him to a full time captain. Then after that, and then now he took over the department that after I left. So it's been a really good. Been a really good relationship that has built over time on respect. But I think it does take about when you talked about egos, I think that's a big part in the fire service. Is you got to have this grit about you or this type A personality and this, but the egotistical part, it is very hard because Dave probably thought I was the most arrogant, asshole, and I'm very egotistical, and I couldn't be told anything either. And then now I see I see that where he was coming from at that time, and then you realize how and what you're doing to go on. So I know that was a long rant, and I apologize, but I think that I'm kind of laser focused even on our organization right now about trying to tell people it's okay to break down these egos, because I feel like early on everybody's just trying to prove themselves. Hey, I can do the job, and I'm good at the job, and I want to be recognized and all this other stuff. So they're just trying to make their reputation.
But I think that's a great point of how, looking at yourself, how you fit into somebody else's life. Because I don't think many people probably look at things that way.
I know I didn't. So
Yeah.
Well, you remember the keynote with the R Factor?
Yeah.
And they said that, we make 35,000 decisions or choices every day. But they also had in that lecture, they had that you own the 20 square feet.
Yeah.
So you own this 20 square feet around you. But outside that 20 square feet affects everybody else. So what I might do is going to affect you and vice versa. But then you multiply this into these officer roles and you're affecting multiple people, on a regular basis. And you come in, and I kind of use the analogy is you come in and you have a bad day. So now it completely affects you of how you're like, oh, well, I can't ask that. Now I can't get this work done, or I got to try and figure out a different way to do it because, I can't ask that person. And that's just my easy way of being able to think about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Why did you choose forging instead of building? So I forged the team instead of building. Why did you do that?
Yeah, so going through this process of learning how to develop teams, I stumbled across a concept that was working for me. And that concept is of the actual forging process of metal. So not using forging as, it's used as a euphemism now, like forging something, making something. The actual process of forging. And it's a 4-step process. Now, mind you, I don't know how to forge anything in real life, but I do understand the wave tops of what they go through. And the most rudimentary aspect of it is you heat up a piece of metal, right? It has to come to like around 1,200 degrees for most metals in order for it to be shaped. And then that next step, I just gave it away. The next part is shaping. They're pounding away with the hammer. And then that third step is they cool it in a bath of water, so that way it doesn't warp after it gets shaped. And then after that, it needs to be finished, right? You polish it, sharpen it, create some value, fine tune it. And so there's the 4-step process. And this is what I realized is that in order to develop a team, it's actually a change management process. And it's a concept that wasn't taught to me in academia. I've never heard anyone else talk about building a team as a change management process. But what I realize is everything about forging a team is change. You think like when you come into, you're a new fire chief at a new department, or you're a brand new captain and you get this crew, all that is change to those people. They don't know. One, even if they knew you before, well, now you have rank. So you always hear, oh, is he going to change? Is he going to be or is she going to change, And so everybody's on pins and needles on what type of leadership style. And mind you, there's no such thing as leadership styles, but that'll be another topic. They're pins and needles on your leadership style and how you're going to act and what the day is going to look like. And is it going to be chaos? Or are you going to be mean? Are they going to be able to get away with the same stuff they've always been able to get away with? All these things. And so and then the leader comes in, right? Or the person with rank at least. And, if they're any type of actual leader, there's going to be change because we all have room for improvement and we all need to develop teams. And so that inherently, organically means change is happening. And so with that being said, there's no better way to develop a team than through a change management practice. And so I studied all the change management practices, not to build a team, but because I was introducing change, not knowing later on, like, oh man, change management is building a team. Nonetheless, I tried Lewin's 3-step model of unfreeze, change, freeze, John Cotter's 8 steps, Kubler-Ross's 5 steps. She does, the stages of grief, but they also use that for change management. Nonetheless, what I found out is this process that I stumbled across was the same process that's used for turning a cold block of metal, which we all are, by the way, gentlemen. We're all resistant to change. Some of us are brass and a little more malleable. Some of us are cold, hard steel, and we know who all those people are. I am one of them. I enjoy change, but nonetheless, it made sense of us being cold hard blocks of metal, and how do we get a horseshoe out of that? How do we get a fire axe out of that? And so it's not just recognizing that we need to develop teams. It's also giving the fire service actionable set steps, not just like here's the problem or here's a concept, but here's actual things you can do that you can rinse and repeat no matter where you go in the fire service to build a team. So that's, without getting into the nitty gritty, that's where the concept came from.
Wow, I like that. What kind of, so when do you have like 4 concepts? Is that what you're calling it, the cold, the shape? What is it in the actual building the team? Did I miss that?
I don't understand.
So, so you've identified 4 or 5 different things that you do for that's each and every team that you might get a different crew that you're going to build. What are those?
Okay. Well, I think, let me answer the first part of that question, and that is the forging process is an approach, okay? So like if you think about landing a plane, the plane has an overall approach that it does before it can land the plane. So going through this approach is not going to build your team. It's going to give you a direction and overall methodology of other concepts of how to actually build the team. Okay, and we'll go over briefly, the forging concept. But within that, I also found out. Have you guys heard of Bruce Tuckman? He created the stages of team development. It's forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. You guys heard that? That's been around since 1965. And for the most part in academia has not been replaced. It is taught in fire officer classes and academia to this day. And what I found out for the fire service, because, I learned this, and they repeated it again in my doctorate program, and there is a lot more to what that cycle looks like when we're developing a team, especially in the fire service. It wasn't just this linear step like, okay, we formed, all right, now we're all mad at each other and we're storming. All right, now we got some norms. Now, don't get me wrong, like you see those things happening, but it is such a broad look at it compared to the nuances that you go through in developing a team. And so what I recognized was a pattern on every single successful team that I was able to forge was this cycle that we would go through. And so that is also part of it. It's once again, it's this awareness piece for intentionality of how can you know where to go if you don't know where you're at right now? And so what the cycle does is it allows you, when you're going through this forging process, to know exactly where your team is at in the process of, you know what I'm saying? So one is an approach, one is a glimpse of where you're at in the process as you develop the team. Does that make sense? And then this next layer that I stumbled across is what I call, and this is just my thing I made up, it's called relational systems leadership. And this was actually the first part of the book that I wrote because I literally just stumbled across it. And that was, I remember I was telling you like repeatable processes. Well, all my processes were relational based. I wasn't concerned about like the numbers, and I wasn't concerned about like, oh, were your boots polished and squared away, especially as a company officer. What I was concerned about was the relational behaviors that we were having, right? And so what I did was I started doing replicable stuff that I could be consistent about. And as we know, we use this term called relationship management, right? Like, and that relationship management is different with every single type of person that you have a relationship with. So, for example, your spouse, you manage that relationship different. With your coworkers, you manage that relationship different. And so I found this peculiar that we have this term called relationship management, meaning using management principles in order to have different relationships. But we don't apply that to leadership, which is all about relationships. Like, that's the connection. And so instead of using systems to build better performance and outcomes on objective measures, I developed systems to build relational outcomes. So I can build more trust, so I can give more empowerment, and so I could provide more job satisfaction. All those things that relationships need to strive for, I started building systems for that. Not on purpose, I just organically was doing it because I was able to replicate it, because that's what a system is, something you can replicate. And the beauty behind that is the reason why people become influential is because people can guess or know what that person's going to do next. Here's an example. Even a-holes are respected when they're an a-hole all the time. You see it all the time, like, man, why is that guy like, that guy's the biggest jerk in the world. He has such a following. It's like, oh, that's just Jim Bob. He's an a-hole, but it's because people can trust that.
Yeah.
Who people don't trust are the ones that, like, you're an a-hole one moment and you're like the best thing since sliced bread. They're like, which one are you? Because there's like some cognitive dissonance going on there. And so by building systems that are relationally based, you can put me in any situation, and within 2 years of using a forging process, understanding where my team is in this cycle, and using relational systems leadership practices where I build a system based on that stuff, we will have an actual team. Not a crew, not a group, but a team that trusts, and that 4-letter word love, that will serve each other, put service back into fire service, the brotherhood and sisterhood back into the firehouse. We can do that, and we just need the tools.
How do you create trust rather than like demand it? Because like sometimes, like, I think that's the hardest part in the teams is like somebody has the title and they want to say we throw trust around. And I remember talking to this Navy SEAL, and he said that in the SEALs they don't use the word trust. And he was and the reason why he didn't use the word trust was because trust is like releasing ownership. Well, for example, like to check the truck for the day. I trusted you to check the truck for the day. Well, then I'm like, it's no longer my fault. I might be in charge of us as a company, and you guys need to check the truck. I just trusted that the truck was going to be checked. Well, and he really made a good point, because he said that now I, as the officer, have just completely just let go of ownership. Like, if the truck didn't get checked, whose fault is it?
Yeah.
It's not my fault. I mean, because now I trusted you guys to do it, it's your fault. It's no ownership on me. Whereas it's not micromanaged. He's saying that if we're supposed to check the truck, it's not about me just releasing ownership. We all have ownership in this, and it's about you reporting back to me saying, hey, the truck is checked, or me verifying that, hey, did we get that truck checked? We still all have ownership in this. I didn't just say, I trusted you to check the truck or whatever else, and I just don't have ownership in it anymore. So that ever since he told me that, he said that the fire service uses this trust all the time. I was really kind of trying to figure out how we create this, trust, or this like verification, because like if you verify, then sometimes you're looked as a micromanager then, all the time. So like, what's this balance? So how do we create this, or, rather than demand it, you know what I mean?
Well, first let's qualify it, because one, that's an incredibly interesting point. And so I like it. However, that takes a very managerial perspective of the word trust, and we're not talking about management. Now, management is just as important as leadership, mind you. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's three things you need to do to be a good chief officer. You need to be a good supervisor, you need to be a good manager, and you need to be a good leader. And there's no one that's better than the other. You need all of them, okay? But with that aspect, that's the Ronald Reagan, trust but verify, I would say is different than the leadership trust. And what we're looking for with leadership trust, what you're trying to achieve, just to get us on the same page before I answer the real question, is benefit of the doubt. And that means it can't be verified. That's leadership where, like, for example, you take actions as a leader that, maybe you can't be as transparent with certain things or whatever, or you just can't get all the information out quick enough, because that's what we usually run into. Like, it's like you send emails, you do meetings and everything, and it still only reaches 10% of the department. You're like, man, what is, like, gosh darn it, like, I did everything I could, and still it's not exactly, what I hope for as far as communication. But nonetheless, that's the leadership side of trust, is if you gain enough relational influence with someone, they will tend to give you the benefit of the doubt, especially if they know that you care about them. They're going to revert to the benefit of doubt, and that's the trust that we're talking about when it comes to leadership.
I like that. I know what you're saying now. Yep.
So now, when it comes to building trust, that is a big question, or I should say a big answer, and that is, when we're trying to have someone give us the benefit of the doubt, they need to understand and believe in us as a person. And the only way to do that is to build a relationship. So that's why when it comes, like, leadership is relationships, like, at the end of the day. And so if you want someone to trust you, well, you can't be in your office all day. You can't assume that they believe you had good intentions. That's what we assume of ourselves. No, it's you have to get to know them on a personal level. And the next thing, there's two parts to answer your question. Not just build relationships, but you have to trust them. You will only get back what you give. And so much like raising kids, and I made this mistake as a parent, but when you're raising a teenager, it's impossible for them to gain trust if you're not allowing them an opportunity to gain trust, if that makes sense. And so in the fire service, we'll create SOPs, like I'm transitioning here, but we have all these black and white rules, right? And so where they can't even make autonomous choices and stuff like that. And so you're not even trusting them, and you're expecting them to trust you with your autonomous choices. And so build relationships, and you need to give trust to get it back.
Much like respect, trust is earned. I mean, that's a great way of putting it. I like the teenage kid thing. I got a 16-year-old at home that wants to go out and be a 16-year-old teenage boy.
Yep.
And I can't keep him under my wing forever. It's no different than the guys on the company. You were talking earlier about how, you would have a crew for a while, you get them where you want them, and then move on. That was the first 2 years of me being a captain. And I finally went to the chief, and I'm like, what the heck, man? I felt like I was getting punished, right? Yeah. But change of perspective is, well, you're developing these people. You have to let the baby birds fly. Mm. And two of the three went on to be captains within the department.
Awesome.
Yeah. So but I didn't look at it from that way. I just thought, he's undermining me and giving me I train him up and move him out, and it was really, really hard for a while. But then when you see it through that light, it's like, this is good. We're doing good things.
Absolutely.
So I have a question for you, because it bears in mind with forging your team, we all get to this point, and I'm asking you to speak on this, is at what point do you make the decision that there's that team member that's just not going to be part of the team? Have you come to that decision? Have you had those instances? And how do you make that decision? It's like, I've done everything I can. I cannot progress this person any further. And at some point, they're damaging the rest of the team that we have to cut bait with this. That's
a really good question, and I get asked that a lot, and I get asked that by my captains actually. This is going to sound like rainbows and butterflies, like pie in the sky, but this is the God's honest truth. Of every single team I've developed, there hasn't been a single person that I haven't been able to reach within a 2-year time frame. And here's the biggest reason why. In my opinion, I don't really know. I didn't research it or anything like that. But anecdotally, what I would say is most of the time, that person that was had the worst attitude or the most toxic, they had the most influence. And so they were the informal leader of the group. And I don't swim upstream. In fact, that was I'll spare you the story, but it was one of the best decisions my first day as a fire officer was to pull my lieutenant, or not pull him, me go into his room, his space, and partner up with him as the informal leader for our team that didn't exist yet. We were just a group of people. And dropped my ego, told him I wasn't going anywhere without him. Everyone had his respect, and I needed his help. And I just asked him to partner with me. And I told him where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. He said he would do it. I didn't believe him. In the back of my mind, I was hoping. But he kept his word. And every single person that I've ever asked that question, whoever that informal leader was, and once again, it's typically the person that has the loudest voice, they have 100% of the time followed through with it because I truly did partner with them. And once you have that person, and you don't even have to have them fully committed, they just need to be compliant and neutral. And then they eventually get committed, and then it's just off to the races after that. But you need to partner with the most influential person, and that's typically going to be that person that has the loudest voice in the room. And so I'm not saying that's going to work 100% of the time, as far as because obviously there are those times where they just can't be reached. I just didn't experience that because either they were that person or I had the most influential person and they helped shape that behavior from a peer-to-peer basis, not me. I shaped and helped overall with the team, but concentrated on that informal leader, and we together developed a team. And so I came up with this saying, and that is, if you find yourself leading alone, you're managing.
I like that.
I do like that because it's very true too.
It is very much so.
You have nobody to lead; you're just telling everybody what to do at that point.
That's
so, is that would you say that that's a couple of years? That would be a strategy for maybe company officers right now that could be out there dealing with some of these people that are a little challenging right now. Maybe because I have referred to them myself as cancers in the organization. And it's really hard to be able to change those cancers in the organization, but there's some that are benign, where they stay with just in themselves. They're just always going to be, they're that a-hole over here, and they're going to be all the time. And then there's those malignant cancers that are just, they're the loudest, they're spreading it, they're trying to have, gain as many people as they can on their team. What's some of the strategies for these company officers to kind of help try to break this down? And I get at one point was the partnership, but how else? What other strategies would there be, or what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so there's a few different questions with that question,
Yeah.
And I'll start with the first one is, can it be used as a strategy? And I want to be careful with the word strategy there because there's an inauthenticity. Sorry, words are hard. That comes with calling something a strategy like you're using that person. And I can already tell you that's going to blow up because it's not going to work. It's going to come off, if you're ingenuine about it, eventually, because of that, cognitive dissonance, what you're saying and what you're doing and behaving are going to be two different worlds that you're not going to be able to live that lie. And so you honestly need to genuinely care about that person and pour into them and truly partner with them. And then it becomes an actual strategy, in a sense of it's a method in order to leverage influence that you don't have on the group. And so, but it has to be authentic is how I would say. I mean, obviously that goes without saying, but I do, when people hear the word strategy, it is off-putting, especially when you're talking about people, because then it starts sounding like manipulation, and there's no manipulation involved here. These are leadership tactics, and because they're tactics, it can kind of sound cold, when we're dealing with people. Now, as far as some strategies as far as developing teams. There's a few things that I did. And this goes into the nuances of leadership when you're building the team. And I think that's what you're getting at, Chief. There's this acronym, or mnemonic, I should say. It's the proper word. A mnemonic I developed called MEDS. It's easy because we're, we're firefighters. And so MEDS. You got to take your meds every day. And the M stands for mindset. And this is something I still practice today. And that is a part of self-leadership and self-help is coming into work and mentally preparing and being consistent every single day and not being like people riding the waves of emotion as I go through life in this journey of coming into work with a proper mindset. And I use another mnemonic for it. And by the way, they called me Captain Mnemonic, so that's just how my brain works. And so here's another mnemonic, and that is I try and awe people every shift, and I don't mean awe as in wow. It just makes it easier to remember, but it's a positive attitude, a contagious work ethic, and empathy. That's the mindset I wanted to bring, and that was no matter what was going on at home. No matter what was going on in the apartment, which was 9 times out of 10 way worse than home, I wanted to be the light in someone's life no matter what was going on, no matter, even if I was like, oh man, this is terrible. Like, how do we get through that? It's like, that's when leadership is needed the most. I don't need it in the good times. I need it when poo is hitting the fan, right? And so like, I understood that I need to be positive, and the reason being is I need to model it because that's what I expect of my people. I want you to be a positive light in this organization. So it kept me accountable, like just having the proper mindset. And then the next thing is, as a leader, you have to be the hardest worker there. You have to be. Once again, with the modeling, what I currently tell my leaders now and what I told my firefighters then is come to work ready to work because we're going to get after it. And so they're going to see that every single day, no matter if I come in from vacation, that's always the hardest one, or if, I'm working 2 or 3 jobs outside a lot of firefighters, they have, a bunch of different jobs. And like, oh man, you go to the firehouse so I can relax. Like that is not the mentality around here. That's not what we're going to be doing. And so, coming to work with the proper mindset of positive attitude, get after it, ready to work, and then the most important one, and that's empathy. And how I practiced that was understanding the difference between empathy and sympathy. And people typically get those confused. I got them confused for many years, and what I realized is we typically give sympathy, and that is, oh man, I feel bad for you, I'm sorry. I can even put myself in your shoes, which is what people typically will say empathy is. But real empathy is something that's another step further than that is not only are you going to sympathize with them, but you're going to take action on that as much as you can in your capacity. That's true empathy. You're going to actually do something about it as opposed to, oh man, I feel bad for you. People They certainly need sympathy, but they need a lot more empathy when it comes to the person they're looking up to. They need actual help. And so that's the hard part, because like, what is in your power, you know? Because a lot of times your hands are tied with SOPs or just ethics or just whatever, you know? You get to find the answer to that, but it should look more like empathy than just sympathy, because that is not going to help build trust and build relationships. People can give sympathy all day long. So meds, mindset, I need to make this quicker, so I apologize.
No, you're fine.
The next thing is energy. I'm really giving away a lot of the keynote. Like, you guys might as well just go home tomorrow.
And this will come out way after tomorrow.
Okay,
So
cool.
It's not like anybody's going to hear it before then. So
Sure.
don't worry about it.
I just don't want to bore you guys.
No,
not at all.
I love it.
Not at all.
And that is energy. You know, they say time is the most valuable commodity. And what I've experienced, and it's not a hill I'm dying on, by the way, but what I've experienced is energy is the most valuable commodity, because it's what we do with no one knows how much time you're going to have. I could be gone tomorrow, and there's been so many plane crashes. I mean, we'll see, you know? We'll see. As long as I'm not flying to Thailand, I guess.
Yeah.
You might have to blip that one out. But yeah, it's energy. And how, as leaders, is something we don't talk about enough, is you're getting pulled in so many different directions. Where's the best place to put your energy? And I'll give you a wave top of one of them, and I'm stealing this, by the way, from John Maxwell. He used what he called the Pareto rule. Have you guys heard of the Pareto rule? It's an 80-20 rule. And it applies to so many different things in life, but it also applies to energy and people. And that is, we typically will spend 80% of our energy on the bottom 20% of our organization, the people that you're not going to get any return on investment. And what I've realized when it comes to leadership is 80% of your energy needs to go to the top 20%. And then what happens is it becomes a force multiplier. Because you're pouring into people that are already pouring into the organization, they actually take the load off of you more and more, versus being abandoned. And that's what we typically do. Like, oh, they're okay. They're self-starters, you know, like you start taking advantage of those relationships. I'll give you an example of my wife. Like, I take advantage of her love because I know she's going to love me regardless. We take advantage of high performers because they're going to be high performers regardless. For the most part, there is a point, right, where everyone reaches like, all right, I'm done. And if you reach that, you're way gone. But nonetheless, energy.
You know what Urban says about that point right there, just to chime in a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Urban talks about, Urban Meyer.
Yep.
He talks about the 80-10-10. Mm-hmm. And so 10% high achievers, which would be like your Tim Tebow's, Jack Sawyer's, you know, those high achievers. It doesn't take much. They're already all in all the time. 80% that are going to be there. They have good attitudes and they're going to do the work, but some of them are just going to go through the motions to say they did it. And they're not going to complain about it. And then you got the 10% that are they're going to never come on board. They're just constantly upset about everything and they're the complainers, whatever else. So same thing is have your mindset set towards that 10% or the 80%, not the bottom 10, the top 10 and the 80%. But what him and Tim Tebow, when they won that national championship in Florida, Tim and him used to always have this thing, and he writes about this in his book, that Tim would come in to Urban's office and say, hey, let's go out and get an 80%er. And how we can grab 80%ers and make them those into that higher 10% high achievers. And I thought that was a great mindset about, like, now you're focusing on, like you said, and it builds upon exactly what you said. It's that force multiplier. You're just going out and grabbing an 80%er. Let's go get an 80%er today. And if we can just get one today, we can then work on one tomorrow, you know, and then eventually that's what it is. And I know personally in my organization, all the focus was on the bottom 20% when I first started there. And I said, I'm not wasting zero energy on that. Like we gotta constantly reinforce the good things and the good people and the things that they're doing. And it just force multiplies. So it's a great point. I love that.
Yeah. I actually misspoke. It's meds, it's effort, and part of the effort is the energy piece. But just so I don't misquote my own book.
Yeah, sure.
But
effort, energy, same thing. But you're saying how much effort you're going to put towards whatever.
Yeah, exactly. The next thing is the D is development, and there's a lot of different aspects of development. Honestly, it's the one that takes up a lot of your mental space as a leader, and that is you need to be developing yourself and have a plan for that. You need to be developing people and have a plan for that. You need to be developing your organization and have a plan for that. And you need to be developing your team and have a plan for that. And so you take all of those different aspects of development, and that could be very overwhelming for a leader. And so that's why stuff just gets, they'll pick one or maybe two, or maybe not even have a plan for any of that stuff. But that is, in order to move the needle in anything you're doing, all of that stuff has to go together. And so in order to be an effective leader and to build a team, you need to be in constant development of all four of those things. And, I talk about a development plan that coalesces all that stuff. That's more in the book. But nonetheless, to keep our time here short, development. And then the last thing is strategy. And that is, in order to be effective, you need to be intentional about everything you're doing. And in order to be intentional, you have to have a strategy about this stuff. And you need to be a critical thinker. And so, one of the things that I did organically, I learned this stuff as we talked about progressively, is having a proper mindset, where to put my effort, developing plans, and making sure I strategize.
Wow, that's
good, and they all feed off each other. You can't have one without the other. They all live off of each other, and that's a great acronym to use.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, I like about, when you talk about development and you talk about strategy, I think what comes to my mind right away is the vision. If you're going to get people bought into an organization, you got to have a vision. And if you're not openly talking about what this vision of where this department's going, everybody wants to be a part of something. And then they're fired up about hey, this is what the next steps are. This is what we're building, and everybody wants to be a part of building that. And so I think just being able to talk about having a vision, am I off on that a little bit, or is that what we're kind of talking about on the development too? On because we got to have a plan for all these development things, so we got to have this is a vision.
Yeah. So, I think it's a matter of semantics there. So you're spot on, Chief. What I would really add to your thought there is that it's dynamic, and that is people typically think of strategy as in here's the plan and this is what we're doing moving forward. But a leader is agile, and so that creates its own problems too, because guess who's not as agile as the leader?
The people following them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
guess what you need to do in order to strategize as you're seeing your strategy unfold, because you're still reaching in the dark. You try not to reach in the dark as much as possible, but it's inevitable. You can't escape it. You're going to need to be nimble. And so it's a dynamic process of strategizing. And so, and to make that a little more nuanced for the audience, when I say strategizing, it's for me. Remember, this is leadership. We're not talking about management. It's relational outcomes. So when I'm trying to develop this team, and what I'm looking to do is not change them. And this kind of goes back to your question, Chief, about hey, what do you do with these people you just can't get to? I have learned I can't change these people. And so I'm not trying to change them, because the only way you can truly change a person is to change their values. And what the fire service and academia and Fortune 500 companies do, and I think we talked about this a little bit last night, is they attack the value part, because human psychology is this.
you have core values. Those core values, they influence behavior. And then your behavior influences an overall attitude of being, right? And so how do we influence behavior and attitude? They go after the values. But here's the problem. You can't change values here. And my example is this, like, any of you been able to change your wife since you've been married? I know I tried.
No.
And that's like beating my head against the wall. And she's tried to change me. Now, there are things, we do in order to please our spouse, right? And so maybe over time when you want to change, but your spouse changing you doesn't happen. You have to change yourself. And typically that doesn't happen unless there's some type of life-altering event, like a divorce, a death, a health scare, whatever. That's when people will, make a change, something along that nature. You as a leader, you're not doing that. And so the value classes and the brainstorming and no offense to any fire chief that has their values up on the wall, but it's not going to change an organization. It's not going to change the people within your organization, because even within that, even if like all of us agree, like, hey, we all need integrity, how you view integrity in a specific situation, in a specific moment, and you do and I do are going to be completely different. And so even if we agreed on the value, how we express that value in a very specific situation is 100% of the time going to be different. And so we can't change people, but what we can do, and here's the light at the end of the tunnel, and why leadership is so important, is we can influence behavior. We can influence behavior. The problem with that, and it's why, like, when the fire chief goes on vacation or the captain goes on vacation, when the cat's away, the mice will play. What we're seeing, and what I learned the hard way on this stuff is, like, because I thought I was changing people when I first started on this journey. And what I learned through the school of hard knocks is, I was influencing behavior the whole time. And as soon as I took myself out of the equation, they went right back to, status quo. Until we built a team and there was an identity there and there was an informal leader who took over and kept that culture going when I'm away. That's different, because now there's another dad in town that's doing that while I'm away. Or we have an organizational culture that is simpatico, and they're coming in and it's like I never left, right? But in a situation when you're not in that and you're still developing your team and you don't have that organizational culture, as soon as you take yourself out of the equation, people are who people are, and you're not there to have influence on that behavior. So to answer, kind of going full circle, I don't look to change people. I look to influence behavior, and then hopefully they find the light and change themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, the culture thing is so big. We've seen a mass culture change in our department in the last 3 years. And I think the neatest thing for me as a fire chief is, my assistant chief and I drove that at the beginning. We're 3.5 years into this project now. And now I have line guys that are holding other line guys accountable. And that is just the neatest thing in the world to see, because it takes me out of the mix. I don't have to say anything. My company officers don't have to say anything. I have line guys that will hold other line guys. We don't do that here. Or we do things this way, And I also, we use a system called Guardian Tracking. And I will have line guys that will put in for peer recognition for other people that just because they did something in the field, they're like, this is really neat.
Wow.
And so that culture has helped us change. It's led to people leaving our organization because they didn't want to be a part of it. But the holding accountability, like you said, when you have those key players in that are now bought in and a part of that team, it has just made a massive difference in our department.
But the cool part
That's
is
impressive.
it only attracts the people that are going to be that type too. You
Correct.
know what I mean? That's
Correct.
what's nice about it, because in the future it's even going to be better, because then now all your line guys and everybody else that's out there recruiting are only going to bring the people that are a like-minded mindset.
Correct.
That's a great place to be in. Can you touch on the importance of, just as a leader or even in the fire service in general, being humble, but also being consistent all the time. Because I feel like consistency is a thing in the organization that really makes or breaks a lot of organizations. If we're one way on a Monday, but then Tuesday it's like, we don't really feel like doing that, so we're not going to do that on Tuesday. But then Wednesday we're right back at it. This like kind of that bipolar we talked about earlier. Like it's just all over the place. Can you talk about the importance of being consistent, but also being humble?
Could you draw that connection for me with the humility and the consistency a little more?
And the reason why, well, because operationally, I think sometimes that officers are, this is the way it's going to be, and but then they might be fluid to different people. They don't want the confrontation today, so they just let it be. So the humbleness and the consistency being that they're never humble because they don't really care what your thoughts or feelings are about why. Let's say, and I know I'm trying to find the right words to be able to break this down to make it easy to understand. And I feel like it's because that individual that is that asshole, that is the officer, and he is not humble at all. He doesn't really care about how I feel as a firefighter. And so on a Monday, we have to have all of our stuff done by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. But then the next day, it doesn't matter if it ever gets done. And then there's no consistency on one day. I might be like, it was acceptable to have a t-shirt on and untucked at 7 o'clock, but then the next day it's not acceptable to have the t-shirt, even on. I'm supposed to have a polo shirt or whatever else. So this inconsistency comes with that, but then he has there's no human factor to him. He's not even humble enough to ever be able, I can't approach him and you can't say anything to him and, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. One fantastic question, kind of how I'm reading that, the first part of it, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but there is a paradox when it comes to accountability and empathy, right? And that is the more compassionate you are and you go into the gray, the less accountability there is, right? And then the more accountable you are of making sure someone's toeing the line and having a standard, it takes away the ability to have empathy. And when you're going back and forth, that can build that inconsistency. Is that what I hear you saying as part of your question? Right. So I would say a few things with it. And that is, you had mentioned a couple different examples. There are some things where there is only black and white. For example, when it comes to safety, that's black and white. Like there's never going to be a gray area for that. I don't care if it's training or if it's real world or whatever. It doesn't mean we're not going to take risks, but even within our risks, we're going to be safe with what we're doing. And how you do that is taking appropriate risks, by the way, to qualify that. But nonetheless, safety. Another thing is, for me at least, as a company officer and now chief officer, is attitude. There's no gray area going back and forth. The expectation, no grandstanding at the galley table. This is a sacred spot, and I got that from Matt Kayward, by the way. And I just agree wholeheartedly, and that is there's a lot of people that came before the people that sat at that table, and it's holy ground. And when you come to the galley table, you treat it as such. And if you want to go piss all over what your coworker or the department or the chief or whatever, it ain't going to be at the galley table, and it's not going to be with an audience. And there's no there's no gray area with that. Like that's just you as a leader need to come up with your no-goes when it comes to that, so that way you can be consistent with it. And then what you do is you properly explain the stuff that is gray areas with your guys. And you're not going to know all those beforehand, by the way. But in the moment, like you explain context. Like, hey, fellas, I know during the weekdays, our workflow is from 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock. But, man, you guys have been getting after it all week. we're going to do social freaking Friday. We're going to have some ice cream, you know, buy some firefighters some food, and they'll love you for life. Not really, but they'll love you in the moment. But you explained, I would say, to answer your question, and you know where I'm going with this, Chief, is I think it's communication at the end of the day. You make it the exception, not the consistent exception, but you make it the exception, and you explain the context, and it allows you to have wiggle room, as opposed to just like no communication, and then the inconsistency becomes the consistency, which is what I think you were getting at.
Which I feel like breaks down a lot of organizations, depending on with the inconsistency. You know, inconsistency, but then not being just, you know, understanding your impact. Again, your influence on, you know, outside your 20 square feet.
So I'm glad you bring it up, because it is something we're struggling with in my department right now. And the fire chiefs and my answer for it, because it is a hard thing to fix, is management. It's not leadership. And so that's where, remember, we said we need supervision, management, and leadership to be a good chief officer. And company officer, but it's in different levels, right? So what fixes that is a management principle, and that is we as chief officers have to set the standard for the day to provide consistency. So for us, we gave and this went over like a fart in church, mind you, with our captains. They weren't excited about this because they're being told what to do, right? No one likes to be told what to do. Now, we did communicate the why, and we brought them in the process. There's some context. I asked all of our company officers for them to come up with a workflow. I don't care what that workflow looks like, but it needs to have these 4 things in it every single shift that we're going to be doing. How you guys want to do that, you guys decide. You know how much feedback I got from that? Zero. You know why? Because they're like, well, if we ignore it long enough, maybe you'll forget and we won't have it, you know?
Again, a decision's going to be made, is what I try to say. Be a part of that decision to make it easier, because at the end of the day, there will be a decision made. And
it's why, honestly, on a side note, I believe that people want to feel empowered, not be empowered. We use this empowerment thing like it's the magic bullet.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
Every single one of you I know has empowered all of your individuals. And guess what comes out of that? Still the same 10%. And the reason being, it's a feeling of like, empowering gives people the feeling of control. And no one wants to feel out of control. And so it's not that they actually want to do the work. That bottom 10% that has all the opinions, they don't actually want to do anything with it per se. But they do want to feel like they're in control of their own life and their own work environment. And so with that said, once again, on the side note, that doesn't mean you don't still give them the feeling of empowerment. You still, even though you know it's going to come back with like 0 or maybe 5 people out of the entire organization, you still need to give people the feeling of empowerment. It's just as important. But that was a side note. Where are we going?
We're going on the consistency of like our elite. Well, actually,
no. Where are we at? I'm like squirrel.
We're talking about gray areas and black and white.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
At least somebody's listening.
I was lost up in the moment because I was right there with you, and like, so black and white in the gray areas of like some things, but it was still the consistency piece of it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I completely forgot.
Blurring the lines between empathy and
So with that said, we need to make sure that.
It was the 4 things that need to be done for the day with your captains,
Thank
and the
you.
captains were going to come back. That's what it was.
That's right. Thank you. And so what we decided to do to make sure that we were consistent across all of we have shifts, but all of the platoons at all of the different stations, because we can't have 15 different fire departments and we can't have 15 different ways of managing the day. We need consistency. Sad to say, but we developed an SOP and we already had one, but it wasn't nuanced enough. There was too much wiggle room for our leadership team. And so we provided them that workflow of like, hey, between this time and this time, barring calls, barring whatever, like spontaneous stuff that we have, This is what an average day should look like for every single company in this department.
I like that. Which we did that too. You know, the daily
Priority of
duties.
the day.
Yeah, the
Yes.
priority of the day, and just kind of gives everybody a direction of what to do and what to fill their time. And then because what that does is cancel out the one shift talking about the other shift, and the other shift didn't do anything, you know, whatever else. But then there's also a structure to the day. But there is also some consistencies that we were talking about when we just talked about down here too, about even consistencies about setting up. Like, remember we were talking about the ambulance and stuff, about like, hey, one shift sets up the ambulance this way, another shift sets up the ambulance that way. Like, those inconsistencies too, I mean, are also an issue as well, wouldn't you say?
For sure. Absolutely. And because you have the opportunity that we strive so hard in the fire service, muscle memory, right? We want to be able to be peak performance at 2:00 in the morning without even having to really think about it, right? We want that muscle memory. And when you start moving things without it going through a process of the officers and the chief putting it out that it's going to happen, you know, we're making this change. Why? Show me that there's a problem, and then we'll fix it. But if it's just out of convenience, or I don't want to say laziness, but maybe complacency, you can't move things around, because now you're having different fire departments amongst your shifts or your different stations. You know what? You need to do what best fits so you can be the most productive, but it still needs to be a team approach. Or
Because if it's
no different than a football team.
That's right.
Or a baseball team. If you have one person go rogue, the play doesn't happen. The success isn't there. And, you know, we want 100% success 100% of the time.
I think you bring up a good example, because many will look at this, even our listeners. I guarantee there's someone thinking in their head, well, that's micromanagement. That's ridiculous. What we confused management with is this term called micromanagement. It's like the get out of jail free, like any sense of any type of management and being told, like, well, you're micromanaging me. Like, no. And I think what you use is a great example, and that is a football play. And that is, when you give a workflow, that is, you're calling the play from the sideline. It's the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. They get to adapt and work and make decisions within that play. And sometimes they have to go off script, depending. And that's where the autonomy comes from. And we want to empower our captains. And what I express to our captains, like, hey, I'm not here to micromanage this stuff. I'm here to make sure that on a normal day, you're actually carrying this stuff out. And it goes back to what you were talking about before this, and that is, it's only as good as the accountability from the chief officer, because you can write all the SOPs you want in the world, especially, you know, a workflow one. But if you don't have a chief officer with some cojones and really some leadership equity and relationships with those captains, it's going to go back to status quo and whatnot. And all of your BCs and all of your assistant chiefs need to be on the same page, you know, to make that actually happen. It's just paper. And honestly, that's what my fire chief told me. He's like, hey, it's on paper. That means nothing unless he's telling me, like, hey, buddy, you're going to make sure this happens. It's on paper now. We're not just writing this stuff for fun. And good on him. Those are conversations he needs to have with me. But yeah, the football play is a perfect example of, that's we need to give them the play. And I think that's where we go wrong in the fire service, is we play backyard football. And that is, everyone go long and make up your own routes. And we call that empowerment and autonomy. And we see what it looks like out there, and that's inconsistency. And it's 15 different departments. No, I should say, we need to bring leadership. You know, I'm all about leadership, trust me. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to make sure we're managing appropriately.
Well, and I think that's good, proper leadership. I mean, my experience with especially the young guys is they want to be led. As long as you give them the direction, that's what they want. Give them the direction and then give them the pathway to complete the assignment that you give them.
Yeah.
But I don't have to stand over them and watch them do it all.
Yeah. Call the play.
Yeah.
Call the play and let them go to work. And then,
Yeah.
like you said, you can't have that one rogue person saying, oh, well, by the way, you called a left
I'm
wing.
going to go left when you want me to go right.
Yeah, exactly. And then you wonder why we dropped the pass.
Right.
And that was the drop the pass in that case was the cardiac monitor was in a different spot and we couldn't get it. And we didn't show up, with our SCBA, full, and we didn't have this, or, a tool was moved. That's the drop pass. And that, unfortunately, that's somebody's life, or could be somebody's life.
And it's not our time we're playing with.
That's right.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah,
the
great
public's time.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Let me ask you guys a question real quick, and that is, I'm gonna flip the script. I'm asking you guys questions.
All right.
Sticking with the football analogy, would you guys say that the quarterback is leading during the play?
Well, yeah, because I've used the football analogy in my department, and I just use it. I'm the coach. I'm going to call the play. But for us, the shift captain is pretty much the quarterback. He oversees his shift. He confers with his lieutenant and sets up the day with them. But the captain has the ability to move the ball either direction based on what he's faced with during the day. As long as, and this happened the other day. I had a shift. They got hammered 3 shifts in a row. They had 5 fires in 3 shifts, a cardiac arrest, an auto accident with entrapment, and 2 of those shifts they ran 20 runs out of 2 stations.
That sounds like heaven.
So the lieutenant
Might
came.
have to bleep that one out too.
You're right. Yeah, we've all wanted to be there. The captain came to my assistant chief and said, "Hey, if you see the guy sitting around the station today, I gave him permission. They have killed it lately. I just wanted to give him a break." And our response was, "Great.
Yep.
That's the way it should be."
Absolutely.
And we actually went out there and conversed with them so they knew that we thought it was okay.
Yeah.
And
Man, you're doing all the right. I'm going to come work for you. Hey, you're killing it.
I'm not 100%,
We
trust
need to
me.
be asking you the question.
No,
that's for
no.
sure.
Well, and I've learned a lot over the years. I used to be a manager. It's only been in the last few years that I've transitioned into a leader, and I've worked for a couple great bosses that taught me how to deal with people versus how to manage systems. Yeah. And I was a manager earlier in my career, but this is the empowerment that we give the captains as the quarterback to adjust to what they're saying, and they never had that prior to us getting there.
So what's the answer?
I go with the captains. I go with the shift captains.
No. Is
a
a quarterback a leader during the play?
Yes.
I think the quarterback manages the play, but the coach is who leads it.
Okay. What's your?
I'm gonna go with the quarterback because you are allowing them as that leader for that period of time.
Yeah.
They're leading the team on the field. They are leading them down the field.
Uh-huh.
They have the ability to call an audible.
Yeah.
But I'm also a little bit torn because that leader can't perform his job. He's almost like a maestro, but he can't perform his job without the rest of the team.
Uh-huh.
You can have the best quarterback in the world and the worst team.
Yeah.
Because you don't have guys like the line, right? You don't have the down and dirty. The down and dirty is what does it. All right. Offense wins games. Defense wins championships.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple different ways you can look at that,
Yeah.
but somebody's always got to be the leader.
Yeah.
And I think for that 4 to 6 seconds from A to B, the quarterback is the leader of the team on the field.
Okay.
Oh, the reason why that I say that I think that they're managing the plays. They're giving them, you know what I mean? And the reason why my analogy, I guess, maybe in my head is because the leadership or leading that specific play and every play after it all happens well before that play. You know, so we've done all the work up to it. We've done all the things. And so now they're just managing that play. Like we've practiced it, you know, until we couldn't get it wrong. And we've given them all the tools to make the audible, but they have to be able to, they're just now just managing within these guardrails for that specific task. So like during the day, they're going to be managing their day, which more operationalized, where like you guys and us, you know, we're leading the department on and on a day on an organization as a whole. So that happens well before. So that's just how my mind works. And I know that could be word salad or whatever else, but I just feel like they manage the plays, but the leading the play actually came well before that.
I'm really interested to see what you have to say about
Yeah,
this.
I am too. I am too.
Well, one, I think it's a question that is good for your guys as captains. And how I view it is the play itself is the fire ground, right, or whatever emergency. And that is, I don't need a stitch of leadership in order to manage emergency, to tell my guys, cut the hole here, grab the hose, pull it here. I don't need a relationship. I need authority. And so therefore there is, in my view, zero leadership when it comes to fire ground activities. We're simply managing resources, and we're making decisions on where to put those resources to be effective. And I don't like you right now, Chief, because you took all the words out of my mouth. You're 100% correct. You got there, as you were thinking through it more and more, you got more and more there. And this is the ditty that I express to people, and that is, on the fire ground, that's where we work as a team. On the training ground, that's where we learn as a team. During downtime, that's where we become a team. And that's because it's relationally based. And we confuse this management things, and we do it all the time in movies and stuff like that, like, oh, that person was a great leader, led him on the beach of Normandy, and it's like, that's not actually how it works. All the leading to be prepared for that moment where those people were able to do the job happened well before the play started. Once the play started, now that you need to manage those amazing relationships that you've built. You need to manage the resources to help them get the job done. But that is a management process. And so that quarterback is managing a play. He's not using his relationships, like maybe in the huddle, before the play starts, that kind of stuff, But in the heat of the moment, we're talking about resource management. We're not talking about relationships when it comes to execution of the job. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the relationship piece, though, too, also is very critical on the post-incident analysis, at least in the fire service.
Absolutely.
On the hot wash.
Yep.
Now we're having a conversation about, well, I messed up, and you need to tell me I messed up. And so that me having a relationship with you guys, knowing that, hey, it takes courage to tell me that I messed up, and it takes me to be able to be humble enough to be accepting that, to know that you're taking it from a good spot. So I think that's where the relationship then stretches us through after, the play. I think about in the football scene when you come back to the sideline and the receiver dropped the perfect pass and the quarterback is super pissed about it, but the relationship is, the quarterback's mad about it, but he knows the receiver didn't do it on purpose, and the receiver knows that he should be mad about it because he should have caught the pass, you know what I mean? And I think that's no different in the fire service.
I'm glad I got that answer wrong because I love that explanation, Johnny.
I do as well. I've always heard about, the pregame, the work up leading up to it and how important it is. And our success comes from not what we do on the fire ground. It comes from what we do leading up to the fire ground. Your policies, your training, your team building. And so it makes sense what you said. So
yeah. To take that thought real quick one step further, and that is really when we're talking about this concept we call leadership, it actually doesn't have much to do with effectiveness in any part of our job. Meaning, if I'm an effective manager, right, I can make sure you have plenty of time off. I can make sure you're well paid. I can make sure you're well rested. I don't need any relationships for any of that. I can make sure you have the greatest equipment in the world. I can make sure you have the greatest training in the world. I can make sure that you're given a great schedule. And what happens is we confuse effective management as great leaders. Really, what we need leaders for is the job satisfaction part of it, the heart, the love, the connection part of it,
So that way when we fail as managers and we want people to show up to work, because no one wants to just do the same old all the time and go through challenges. It's that connection piece that gets us through those things, that gets us through the rough calls, that gets us through coming to work and not wanting to be there today, you know, because you're going through stuff at home. That's what we need leaders for, is the human side, but yet we focus on the operational side for leadership. And really, that is a byproduct of having really good leadership, is them doing that stuff on their own. But having that stuff in and of itself does not mean you're a good leader. It's not a good litmus test for it, because I can be a really good manager and give you all the same things.
You do a really good job of articulating stuff in the right words for me to understand.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, gosh, like I always like
Speaking to
struggle
the
with
soul.
that. Like, my gosh, I'm really, I struggle with that a lot myself. But okay? So, in the interest of time, so we can kind of we'll do some closing stuff. But I want to find. I got a question. What's one thing a leader can do today to begin forging their team?
I think, well, that's a hard question to answer, Chief. And the reason being is it depends on where they're at in that process. Like, do they have a brand new team? Because I would give them one answer. If they if they've made, like they haven't led effectively and they don't even have a team, they have a group and they've had the same people for the last 5-6 years or whatever, that's going to be a completely different answer. So I think context matters in that aspect.
We'll use my department for an example.
Okay.
We're going through the promotional process for 3 new lieutenants.
Okay.
And those new lieutenants are going to get an entirely new shift. So what's one thing that maybe they could do by getting a new shift to start today that they could potentially, maybe that's where they're at in the cycle. Just a new shift, new fresh start.
All right, so they're newly promoted and they have just a group of people they need to make a team.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. First thing they need to do is one, figure out what vital behaviors that they want to put emphasis on. And that's not my term. I got it from a book. I forget the name of the book, but in the book they talk about vital behaviors. And that is, there's so many things that you need to keep track of, nuanced things as a leader, that it's impossible to be consistent on all of it. So that way we're not consistently inconsistent. And so what the book expressed is you need to find 2 to 3 things that are vital behaviors that will take care of all that smaller stuff. And so once again, for me, what I chose were 3 things. 1, attitude, that's a vital behavior for me. 2 was work ethic. 3 was training. I felt that training fixed 90% of my problems. If there was stuff broken on the apparatus, we found it because we were using it in training. If we need to know where stuff is, we're using it because we're training. If we want to build trust and relationships, we're out there, talking to each other. If we want to see that our captain can actually do the job, they're using, EDIP, which is explain, demonstrate, imitate, and perform, right? And so they're going through that process and you're building trust and relationships with that leader. And so all these beautiful things. Nonetheless, I think we're all on the same page on that. Those were the vital behaviors. And then what came out of that is I didn't have to be like, hey, why aren't you wearing your helmet? Or, that stuff started to take care of itself because of the things I put importance on. It would matriculate to all these smaller nuanced things that, you'll have those leaders that are like, they just pick the most obscure thing that they want to stress on. Like one of our, I won't say a name or rank, but a leader in our department, he's retired now, but his thing was if you're on the top of the engine, make sure you're wearing a helmet. He wouldn't say a lick of anything to you all day, but if you're on the top of an engine with no helmet on, it's going to do nothing for you, by the way.
Yeah.
He was letting you know, but nonetheless, I joke, but we need vital behaviors. And so I would say they need to figure that out first. So that way, like you talked about having a vision, So that way when you are ready to sit down with your team, you can have a conversation. First thing I would do first shift is, and this is what I'm telling you stuff that I practice, mind you. I would guess on who that informal leader was, and that very first shift, I would sit down with them every single time and have a conversation with them. And you pretty much know who has the influence if you've worked in the department any amount of time. I was wrong on one of them, and I pivoted and got that other person. It all worked out well, but nonetheless, the bigger department it is, the harder that part is, and so you may have to wait. But nonetheless, as soon as you can, you have that conversation. The next thing is I grouped up all of my people, and on every single time, mind you, and I let them know that I was observing. I wasn't going to change anything. Like, hey, just so unless it's a safety thing or whatever, just so you guys know, I want you guys to understand something, guys and gals. I'm not changing anything. I want to come in and get to know you guys and see how the workflow goes and whatnot. And what that does is it puts people at ease because they're worried about the change. Now, I tell them change is coming, okay? And so they understand that, but at least they can understand. I'm being very transparent about the process. There's nothing to hide here. And then through that, I'm taking notes, I'm watching, and it is hard because if you are a person who just gets after it and you see something that's wrong and you see a bad attitude or whatever, what do we all want to do? We're like,
Fix it right there.
You want to snap that neck right there and be like, and so that's the hard part is you have to resist that in a very big way. And you have to be a man of your word or a woman of your word and just take notes. And then once I was done with my observational period, I would pull everybody in, and we would have a meeting as a company or a leadership team, or soon-to-be team, I should say. And I would go over something that was very surprising I'm giving away my secrets now, but like always surprise them, and that is they're thinking you're going to drop the hammer. And they're like, all right, you suck at this, and you're terrible at this. I didn't do that on any of them. What I explained to them was all of their strengths and let them know we have some general weaknesses that we're going to be focusing on, and then here's my expectations. Because I didn't want them to focus on the negative part. I want them to understand that they have a lot to offer because they all did, and use positive reinforcement as a new leader coming in, recognizing what we did. And some of them I had to tell, like, hey, we're doing a lot of minor things, so it's death by 1,000 razor blades. We're going to shore that up, but I want you to know I am excited to be here with you guys. This is the plan. This is what we're going to do moving forward. Mind you, I've already had the conversation with the informal leader, so he already knows what that conversation is going to sound like. And then from there, now mind you, this is not all rainbows and sunshine. You're still going to have people trying to sabotage you. You're still going to have people trying to work against you. All that stuff is coming. Don't think you're an exception. It's coming. And then so you work through this process, and then so that's where you get into, this forging process of heating, shaping, cooling, and finishing. And I'll leave that as a surprise for the keynote, unless you want to hear it. I can tell you.
No, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, let's say
I do have a quick question, and sure. I know it's going to be different for everybody, but we work in a service that's instant gratification. And that can get a new leader down sometimes when they're not seeing the response. So first part is, how long did it take you to forge your first team? And maybe it's still ongoing because it's a never-ending process. Mm-hmm. And what benchmarks did you set so you knew that we're doing the right thing, we're moving it, that pendulum shifting in the right direction? Just as pointers for new company officers out there or new chiefs out there that are trying to, they want to forge that team. They want to build that team. They want to win, every day.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for that? What is a acceptable time frame for you?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be different for everybody.
Absolutely.
And then what benchmarks would you suggest people set so they know they're heading in the right direction?
Yeah. So, 3 different questions there. if I heard you right, the first question is, how do you stay patient with the process? 2, what benchmarks would I use? And 3, time frame. Correct? Mm-hmm. All right. So when it comes to staying consistent with the process, it's actually, I'm writing another book right now, so thank you for segueing, sir.
I'll expect some royalties.
Yeah, absolutely. What's half a zero right now? I think there's 3 things, and I'm going to speak very frankly, and you can bleep this out if you like, Chief, but there's 3 things the fire service is missing. It's missing Jesus, it's missing teams, and it's missing self-leadership. And so what you're espousing right now is that self-help, that self-leadership. Like, how are you mentally being able to stay resilient in these situations? And there's actually a tactic I use for it, because we are all confronted with proverbial fires, not just the real ones, every single day in this thankless position that we call leadership. And here's the 3 things I do is, 1 is I have a plan for the day. Meaning this is, I don't tackle a day without intentionality. And the reason why that's important to answer your question, the reason why that's important to do as a leader is because if you're not dictating your day's dictating you, and you are at the whim of it. And there are too many people that aren't intentional about their day. They just like, all right, let's see what the day brings. And that's fine if that's their personality, but there's also a cost to that approach. And that is, you're going to get discouraged after a while if you're not intentional of what you're trying to achieve that day. Because it does another thing that it sets you up for, and I'll get to that's actually the 3rd step, so I'll get to that. But here's the most important one, and that is, it doesn't matter how well you plan a day, fellas. I think we can all agree that in the firehouse, that thing's going to get destroyed, right? Like,
Yes.
And so, it's once again, it's that agility type of thing. But this is what I do, because it's winning every day. It's not winning, the month or the year. That's too far down the line, and you're not going to make it, because every day is coming. You got to win every day. And so with that said, how I win each shift is many times I have to reset my day. I have to reset my shift. And what I mean by that is, like, say I plan my day and things are going well, and it's just like call from the wife, the fire chief, and then the captains, or a battalion chief, or a firefighter, just like the whole world is catching on fire, because we know how that works. It's like when it rains, it pours. And we are no exception. Firefighters deal with this on a constant, and we're usually part of that, chaos that we provide for them. And so what I do is I literally will look for a micro win. I will be intentional about, like, okay, I need to get control of my day. And right now, the day is controlling my emotions. It's controlling how I feel, which is now going to control my actions and how I'm portraying myself to every single one of the firefighters. Remember what I said about the attitude, work ethic, and empathy? So it's another, when I said accountability, and this is why it holds me accountable, is because I mean that. I actually pray about it, like, Lord, like, help me have a positive attitude no matter what. Well, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it when you're in the fire. And so what I've developed is a way to reset my day by getting these little wins. And I don't care how small they are. I'll get a quick little win, and then once I get that win, it's already a dopamine rush. There's 4 things that typically produce your emotions: dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin, and serotonin. And so what I'm looking for is that dopamine, like, oh man, like, because I have cortisol dumping in my body right now, right? So I need some dopamine to counteract this thing. And the easiest way to do that, to manipulate the mind, is by getting something that's in your control, whatever that looks like for you as a win. I don't care how small it is. And then you start building that. Okay, what's my next thing? What am I going to do next? What can I do? And sometimes I won't even focus on the problems because I can't fix some of those right now. And so once I get these wins and I start building momentum, I turn into a freight train where I can then start tackling some of these things, where some of them work out on themselves because I didn't react right away and time healed it, right? Because we can also like react too soon to things and make it just worse instead of just letting time. But nonetheless, that can organically happen for me. And then at the end of the day, the third part, and this is why you plan your day, is I celebrate those wins. I intentionally look over and it's like, man, like I overcame this today, or I like, gosh darn it, like I killed the freaking day. And so have a plan. When you need to reset the day with some small wins and build momentum, and then make sure that you're reflecting on those things at the end of the day. And you do that, and you're going to have very, very bad days in life in general, not just at the firehouse. So that's that first part of the question. As far as time frame, what I've noticed is anywhere between 18 months to 24 months. So a year and a half to 2 years, just depending on how much obstacles you have to overcome. Because remember, like there's staffing, there's COVID, there's stuff that is, you can't stop. That's going to inhibit your team building process. That's just way bigger than your team. And if you guys remember from fire officer books, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're not moving anywhere without the safety and security piece of it. And so as soon as that gets taken away, I've tried to lead through that, and it's impossible. Like you got to have the safety and security. And so that's just, you're not building a team at that moment. What you're doing is just taking care of your people, making sure they're good to go, and doing the best you can just to get them to show up to work every day and not kill themselves. Or, I don't want to say kill themselves, but, like be at each other, at each other's throat. And
It's survival at that time.
It is.
Yeah,
there is a survival aspect. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, so you said time frame. You said
Benchmarks.
benchmarks. Thank you. And so that's why that first piece where we talk about the observational period is so important. And using meds, right? You develop plans and stuff like that. Benchmarks are going to happen organically on an individual basis of what those people need, what your strategy and your plans are in order to get from point A to point B. So that's going to look different for all those nuances that are just part of that equation. And so, but the beautiful thing is if you use this phases, this cycle that I was talking about earlier, it actually helps you with a lot of those benchmarks. So it's a very good question. And briefly, that cycle, what it looks like is there's a chaos phase, meaning people are just ducks on water. Like they may be calm on top, but they're going crazy on the bottom. You have no idea what these people are thinking and what they want to do to sabotage this thing. And then as you're coming out of that, it's what I call controlled chaos. I mean, there's some leadership in place, there's some leadership intent, but there's no real stability, and it takes a few months to get out of that situation. And then this is the phase that most companies are stuck in, is what we call this erratic phase, and that is, we've all heard it, 1 step forward, 2 step backward. And that's that erratic, like you're just thinking like, oh man, we're gaining so much momentum, we're getting there, and you come in the next shift and you're like, what happened? I feel like everything that we've been working for the last couple of months is like it never, what is going on? That's that erratic phase. But coming out of that, you start to build what we call an identity. And that's where the fun starts to happen. And that is, there's a litmus test. You don't have a team unless you do have an identity. And how does that identity formed? By message discipline through that leader. Whatever culture that leader is trying to make, he's repeating it. Even songs you hate that's played on the radio enough, guess what? You start liking them. It's message discipline. And so in order to create an identity, you're always looking for the things that your team is doing that embraces that identity, and then you point them out and you say it. You point it out and you say it, and you point it out and you're like, that's why we're number one, or that's why we're the best, or that's why we do this, or whatever. And so you start creating this identity, and then once you have an identity, there's something to rally behind now. They need, that's why logos are important and marketing is important. People need something to rally behind. That's why fire chiefs are hated so much. They have something to rally behind. It's just the negative sense, right? And so you need to provide them a positive rallying point. And so you create an identity. So you go through this identity phase, and then we get to the really fun part, and that is where you become a team. And that's this acceleration phase where you truly have momentum. And how you know you're on a team, you said it earlier, Chief, and it was spot on. Accountability is not coming from you anymore. You have an identity. And this thing that McChrystal called, he wrote a book called Team of Teams. It's called shared consciousness. He says, shared consciousness, shared purpose. You have those aspects. You can now say you're finally on a team. And there's going to be love. There's going to be service there. There's going to be people working for each other, not against each other. And then the last one is what I call regeneration. And that is all good things come to an end. However, sometimes we can regenerate, like the salamander, right? Like, unless you cut off its head or you take out its heart, it's going to regrow back whatever limb, like a starfish. Teams can do the same thing. They can regenerate. But the head, that informal leader, the heart, that formal leader, if you take that out, it's probably going to be starting over at any one of those other phases. Controlled chaos, erratic, whatever. So those would be good benchmarks as you learn what each one of those look like as you're going through the process.
Wow, excellent. So the process is great. How difficult was it for you, or did you see any changes or any variations when you went to assistant chief, and now your leadership group is you're leading captains instead of just in a company, and now you have people at multiple stations, and how much more difficult was it to lead that way and to go through that process?
That's a fantastic question. You guys are awesome. How much time do we have, Chief? I'll be succinct. It's extremely difficult. And I think that was a rhetorical question because you being a good leader already, I can tell by what you're already doing in your department, it is extremely difficult. And to be frank with you, I'm still learning that. I'm still going through that process of what does that look like to have less proximal influence and rely on distinctive influence. So it's another thing that's in the book, and that is we call leadership influence, but as we know, not all influence is the same. For example, like when you have an ad on TV or whatever, and they entice you to go eat somewhere, that wasn't leadership influence. They influenced you, through your gut and whatever. Or they use, I won't go into examples there just for time's sake, but leadership does have specific types of influence. And what I've theorized are three, and that is one, self-influence, how you talk to yourself, what you say to yourself in your head, what you think about yourself in the mirror, what you're able to get yourself to do when you don't want to do it. That's self-influence. That's the most important one for you. But the problem is that doesn't go beyond you. No one's reading your thoughts. It goes beyond you by extension because obviously the better you lead yourself, the better you can lead other people. But in and of itself, it doesn't go past you. Your self-influence is only for self, right? Then this next part, and this is the realm that you're talking about, is that proximity, that proximal influence, meaning it's why we lose track of our teenagers. Here's an example. You have the proximal influence of them from 0 to 12 years old. And then they get their driver's license, they're out with their cars, they're doing sleepovers, they're going to, they're on Little League, the influence is coming from their peers because guess who they're spending more time with than you now? And they're developing their own brains and thoughts. There's more nuances, but for the most part, it's proximity. You spend less and less time with them, you have less and less influence. And so as a captain or a battalion chief or whatever, the more time you're able to spend with people, the better you can build those relationships. It's obviously very easy to connect those dots, but what the point I'm trying to get across is the type of influence, and that's the proximity of you to that person is very influential. Now then the next person say, well, what about people we don't love? Like, for example, people love Jocko Willink, and they should. He's a good person. He has a lot of great stuff, but they don't know him, but he influences them and helps lead them, right?
And so that's that next tier, the next part of the sphere, and what I label distinctive influence. And what I mean by that is there's distinctive characteristics about that person that impacts you, that's influencing you. And so the reason why that's important for your question, Chief, is the more you go up in rank, the more you have to rely on distinctive influence and your reputation. So here's one of the ways. I'll give you a quick example of how I help with that is I don't have I don't have an ability as like I did as a captain or station captain, whatever, to influence firefighters anymore. And that's because I don't really get to hang out with them. I do some walk around management, like go to visit stations, stuff like that, right? But that's not enough. What dictates that is my character. And that's one piece. My character, seen through the eyes of my direct reports, they have full control of my relationship. And so I let my captains and my station captains and all the people underneath me know that. Like, anytime, like, information that's going to go over, like, if Art in Church goes out or whatever, like,
we're going to talk about a communication plan, because if you think you're going to go there and not stand on your own 2 feet and be a leader and say, this is what I think and this is what we're doing, instead say, hey, Chief Torgelson said we're going to do this, this is complete bullshit, and paint me as the victim so they can be the martyr, right? They are taking away my distinctive influence, because I got barely any proximal influence. You know what I'm saying? And so to answer your question succinctly is you try and increase the proximity in order to build the relationships, however way you can do that. Doing more station visits, having more intimate conversations, doing stuff outside of work, whatever that looks like for whatever area of, level of the organization. And then you need to control that distinctive influence through being a man of your word and having high character, all those things, and then ensuring that the people that are truly controlling your relationships are doing it in a positive light.
Awesome. I like it. All right. Well, we have spent a lot of time. That's it. I can't believe. No, that's great. Because I didn't really realize how quick time went by.
2 hours.
It was. I look by. I'm like, it's holy crap. We've been talking about it for 2 hours. So that's awesome, man.
All right.
That was an easy conversation too.
Nice.
So I think that'll flow just as well, and the audience will, I'm sure, appreciate it. But before we leave them, I do want you to tell them how they can get your book.
Yeah.
And where to go, and then and obviously me and you connected on LinkedIn a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a good spot to be able to talk if they want to reach out to you or whatever else. But so yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's published through Fire Engineering. So they can find it on fireengineering.com. They can find it on Amazon. Fire Engineering, or Amazon buys books from Fire Engineering, so it's all in there. And then. Actually, I should plug a small business that's here, actually, because they help support it. So let me.
Was that the Pure?
I don't. It's. Please find the card. It's a book distributor that's here. It's John, I know, is the owner.
I think it's Pure Book. I think it's the. He was there at the hospitality room last night.
Oh, I got it right here. Perfect. Yeah, he's a book distributor. He's told me he doesn't have it yet, but if he wants to improve, like, symbiotic relationship, it's Matt Brewer.
Brewer, Brewer.
And let's see, his website is www.fireemsbooks.com. So if you want to help support a small business that is supporting this conference, reach out to them and request the book. Obviously it'll take a little bit longer, but that would help everyone here in the state of Ohio, because these conferences are important, and he supports this conference. And then as far as reaching out to me, I have a website. It's, lo and behold, www.forgingteams.com. Make it really easy. And so there's free digital handouts on there on a lot of the concepts. That I give away freely and you can use and train on, and you can always reach out to me. Obviously, I have services, so I consult. I'll go to your department and help you with that, or we can do team meetings. I also do seminars and workshops at departments and stuff like that. So if this is topics that you're interested in and you found some value in it, please reach out to me, and I'd love to help you and your department out.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate you sharing, and I'm, thanks, Dave and Jason.
I appreciate the opportunity to sit in on the podcast. It's been a pleasure meeting you in the hallway, riding the elevator, man, and just shooting the breeze for a little bit last night. It's amazing to me. I can tell you're a very spiritual person. Yeah. That you've referenced that a couple of times, but everybody's put in the right place at the right time for a reason. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm very thankful for meeting you, Chief, being part of the podcast, being able to be here at the conference. It's been great. So I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Love that, man. Feelings mutual.
I appreciate it as well. I learned a lot today. You're just wonderful insight. And I got a lot out of it, and I thank you. Yeah. I'm like you, right time, right place. I just met Clayton about a month ago on a Fire Chiefs Mastermind podcast or mastermind group, and so developing that relationship allowed me to be here and meet you guys, and I'm overly thankful.
That is so awesome, and thank you, Chief, as well, and certainly you guys just jumping in and joining in on this thing. Yeah. That is crazy awesome, but putting all this together because. Honestly, this is the stuff that fills my cup is being around like-minded leaders that just have a passion for people in the fire service and are truly not just passionate but are actionable about those things, especially with everything that you both have been saying of the great work you've been doing in your departments. I want to pick your guys' brain even more, actually, because you guys are doing great stuff, so feelings mutual.
All right. Well, awesome. Hey, and we look forward to listening to the actual keynote tomorrow, and that's exciting. And thank you for everybody that tuned into the Triple P podcast. This podcast is just simply set to be able to make the fire service better. We just want to be able to talk about different things and what impacts, and hopefully you take one little thing away to be able to make a little change in your place to be able to make a difference. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.